Welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves, Season 2, Episode 30. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
And I'm Paul LePage.
And we've got producer Alex Patakis on the dials again. And, you know, one of our favorite things to do on this podcast is to highlight the growth of the pack by introducing a brand new guest. So, Brian Donley in Charlotte, North Carolina, welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves. How's it going?
Great. Thank you guys for having me on. Really appreciate it.
So, give us a little backstory on how your Wolves support came to be.
Well, it was really started in 2019, so pretty news fan, kind of like you, Josh.
Yeah.
I was kind of just looking for a new hobby at the time. I was playing FIFA and said, you know, if I'm going to play FIFA in my spare time, I should probably figure out how like real soccer works. So I started watching some soccer, and I was getting more interested in it. After a while, I said, you know, it'd probably be easier to learn if I picked a team. After about 10 minutes on soccer Twitter, I discovered that that was not a nice place to be if you're investigating a big six club. Not really friendly. So, and it was a little tricky because I have friends with all the big clubs. I didn't really want to like snub one friend who's a Chelsea supporter by picking Arsenal or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've always had a bit of a penchant for an underdog, an up-and-comer. So I said, I want to go find an up-and-comer, something that's, you know, a new and interesting story outside of the big traditional clubs, and kind of use that as an entry point, learn a little bit, and maybe when once I know what I'm talking about, I'll foray into a bigger club. And then I saw, like, hey, who's this Wolves club? They came out of nowhere, 7th place in their first year up. This is crazy. So I'll just go research that. I started poking a little bit more, and then I saw a picture of Adama Traore.
Are we like long lost brothers? Is that
maybe?
What this is?
Because not gonna lie, from a soccer
Yeah.
point, it was like those 80s movies when the girl walks by in the mall and the guy's gonna pull their glasses down. It's like, whoa, who is this guy? So after that, I started getting into it, and now just got hooked really quick.
I mean, that's very similar to mine. I got into Wolves because of playing FIFA in 2018, and Adama was the one that sealed the deal for me becoming a fan. Even though he's gone now, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm still sticking with
Same
Wolves.
Here. Yeah, he was just such a unique talent. I've never seen. It was just like an alien. It was like this does not seem to fit. I don't understand. But it was just amazing. And then the more I started getting it, like learning more about the club and learning more about the team and the guys, everyone seemed so likable on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many interesting characters, and honestly, it was a very welcoming community. Like the more I started like getting involved in it, you know, starting to meet people, like talking to you guys on Facebook and on Twitter, and it was just seemed like a really good fit, and it's been a really fun ride so far.
Yeah, it's a cool little fraternity of Wolves fans online. I mean, there are definitely some that you still don't always want to look in the comments section of Twitter, especially if it's Tim Spears. That can get a little ugly. But, you know, for the most part, I really enjoy the Twitter interactions that we have. Paul, you're going to see a reason why later today.
Eagerly waiting that one.
So be scared. Be scared. All right. Well, with Adama gone, who's your favorite player now?
Ooh, I like a bunch of different guys for different reasons. Probably Jose Sa, because he's a maniac.
He is. He's awesome. Well, guys, started off great on Friday. 2-0 up, playing great. I don't know what happened with Francisco Trincao. Somebody else like showed up that day. It was awesome. The only negative thing you could say in the first half was Neves came out. Okay, that could be potentially dicey, but it didn't look that serious with him walking off. And then the referee got involved, and it became a gigantic shit show after that. So, Paul, have at it.
I'm going to actually start on that very topic, and right from the get-go, bring in a no stupid question from Chris Worsfold on Twitter. And he asks what possibly could have been in Kevin Friend's thoughts when deciding that it was a second yellow for Raul, as a referee myself, I know the injury to the players would have represented good thinking time. This was not an impulsive decision. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, because immediately as you saw him going over there, he had the yellow card in his pocket. Both the players were still down. He had his yellow card out. It was in his hand. It was ready to go. And it was, well, who's going to get booked? Is it the keeper or Raul? So he knew what he was doing. And we can bitch and moan about VAR all we want, but if there was ever a time for the technology to be used in a practical way, would have been that one. I know they don't do it for 2 yellows, they should do. If it results in a player sending off, because what we want to be watching is the best 11 on the pitch. Ideally, we don't want any sendings off. We want to keep that, keep 11 versus 11 in all ways possible, if we can, for the entertainment of the game. But for him to just have preconceived thoughts that was going to happen just smacked to me. And I could have told you up front, it's him, it's Mike Dean, it's these refs that we know way too well in terms of dominating the conversation after the game. When why is a referee dominating the conversation when it should be the two teams? It's him, it's Dean, it's these others that walk around thinking they're God's gift. And it's not about them. And he was itching to do something all game. You could just tell. It was that type of niggly, bitty game. He wanted to put his mark on it. He wanted to be the name in the refereeing lights. And it was just a shit show. And that ruined it from that point onwards as far as we go. But we could talk about refereeing all we like. But the calamity that was the defensive performance afterwards, I don't know where the heck that came from. I know you just lauded him, Brian, but what Sarr was doing, just all over the shop, crazy positioning, and just coming up in really strange spots, whether that had a knock-on effect to confidence in the players in front of him, whether Saïs's bang to the head after that clash, whether that resulted in anything, because what he was doing for that clearance, goodness only knows. So we could talk, we can moan about the referee and all we like, but at 2-0 up against the team that's kicking around in the lower places of the league, we should have at least closed it out, just shut up shop and being able to hold out for a 2-goal lead. I think there's question marks over the players. There's probably question marks over Bruno, because having those two wider players with no focal point, even a man down, that there was just no respite. There was no one chasing down, really. The ball wouldn't stick. If it was a better time to stick Fabio on and just say, you got to run, just keep on running, run your balls off, just keep on going for it. It had probably had to sacrifice probably Trincao, who would have been a sub that played the perfect sub game that had to be subbed again. And then if Podence would have worn himself out later on, then that would have been a switch for another midfielder, or maybe Wang in that situation. But we definitely needed that forward outlet, and it was probably a situation where that 5 at the back was a little detrimental, that when you're already in that setup, it's not like adding an extra man. You can't really go 6 at the back. So you got 5 at the back, and what's that going to do apart from defend? So if you're defending badly, then you're going to be you're going to come unstuck. So we were certainly undone by the man bun of Leeds.
Yeah, I felt like this was one of the first games since he's left that Adama really would have made an impact on when they went a man down, just because they did have that speed factor, even though he's not the target that a Fabio would be. And so not really a direct replacement for Raul. Just having that speed back there may have pushed their midfield back just a little bit, because they were balls to the wall. But, I mean, Brian, it just seemed like Paul mentioned Saïs's misplay. Bali had another one. Aitnery missed a header. What do you think was going on with the back 5 there?
I don't know, but as you said, maybe they just got rattled having lost all that momentum, because going in the end of the first half, they were flying. They kind of felt like they could do no wrong. I know Leeds is a really good pressing team, and they move really fast and they push really hard all the time. So when you're down that extra man, it can quickly, instead of feeling like you're 10 on 11, we can feel like you're 10 on 9, and maybe add that with a little bit of tiredness. I don't know, yeah, because normally these guys were all pretty sure-footed, and it definitely felt like every time we made a mistake, it got capitalized on. And like there were times I ended up rewatching it on Sunday night just to see if I could find positives in the second half, honestly, because I did not on Friday night. Where it felt like, okay, you know, we're trading some confidence back, we're pushing it forward again, we're holding on to it a little better, and then someone, you know, Sice would mess up that one, or there was that someone would mess up and it would just come back for a really strong chance. And I don't know whether it's just bad luck, but sometimes you can mess up and you don't pay for it, which has happened before. But sometimes you mess up and you pay for it. And it was a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, which is odd, because like that's been the trademark of this year, is that you don't do anything spectacularly well, but everything is very solid. So yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, it was a wild show back there.
Yeah, and I think it can definitely be viewed as a lost opportunity, because Wolves would have moved up to 7th after the Tottenham West Ham game. So I think I'm still pretty confident in saying this is playing out to be an 8th place finish, Paul. Even though they're still right there, might be able to get 7th. Just looking at the schedule and everything, it kind of feels like they're almost there's the Europe tier, and you know the mid-table tier and the relegation tier, and we're in a tier by ourselves. We're like the Wolves tier, which is like not quite Europe, not quite mid-table. You don't know. We're the Forrest Gump. That's what I'm gonna call it, the Forrest Gump tier. Life's like a box of chocolate. You know, Wolves are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. So I mean, did Sunday's results really make it a tougher loss for you, Paul?
Yeah, based on the fact that it was another game where we're running out of the number to play now, and when the remaining games that we've got have Liverpool, Man City, and Chelsea within it, you know, you can question 9 points straight away from those. But then again, typical Wolves, there's a chance we could probably win one of those. So you never know. But I think what Sunday did for me was definitely put anything higher than 7th out of the equation now. As flaky as Man United have been this season, and Tottenham, I really can't see either of those teams now really falling off, going by the wayside and dropping that deep to where we need them to be to get into that space. So I think 7's still in play. It's definitely a shootout between ourselves and West Ham. I would have to go side by side in the run-in to compare fixtures and see who's got the best hand. But I think it's those types of games on Friday night that you're expecting a win, or certainly after that first half you were expecting a win, that again, momentum off the back of that win, off the other two through on the bounce, we'd have gone a long way to keeping that momentum, and West Ham would have been the team that would be struggling and dropping down.
I pulled that running because I was thinking the same thing of it's a pretty dead on 8th, because in order to get 7th, obviously we'll have to get up ahead of West Ham, and we have the same number of games in a pretty similar run-in. It kind of looks like we'll need to basically beat everybody that's not a top 4 side to get to 60 points. And let's see, I had West Ham at Everton, Brentford, Burnley, Chelsea, Arsenal, Norwich, Man City, Brighton, which is pretty similar run-in to us. So they got a number of winnable games. They got a couple big sides there. We're gonna have to win one more than they will. So we're gonna need a little bit of help. Their form isn't great right now. So if we can restabilize the ship, there's a chance. But I agree with you. It looks looking pretty dead on 8th right now, which is still a big accomplishment.
Yeah, it's gonna boil down to not fucking up. one of these games. Like I saw somebody yesterday that was like, knowing us, we're gonna like beat Man City and then lose to Norwich. And I said, yeah, I could 100% see that. Absolutely.
We still have to play Burnley.
So you mentioned Jose Sa heading into that game. I'm going to give you some stats here. This is both his ranking in the Premier League and in the top 5 leagues. So in save percentage, heading into that game, he was at 84.1% save percentage. That's first in the Premier League and first in all of Europe in the top 5 leagues. Plus 10.7 post-shot expected goals, first and first. 27 crosses stopped, second in the Premier League, 7th in Europe top 5 leagues. And then saves, 96. Second in the Premier League, 4th in the top 5 leagues. It's really incredible. And even though he had a rough game, and I think a lot of that did have to do with the center backs message. I mean, just how awesome has this season been, Brian?
Oh, it's been amazing. So I didn't know really anything about the guy when he came over. I remember looking him up and saying, "Oh yeah, Rui was really good. I liked Rui a lot. He'd allow a soft goal now and again, but he was real solid." And I was like, "Oh yeah, this guy will probably be, mid-tier." Trying to think of a good comparable, like Guaita. Not as good as like Emi Martinez was kind of my anticipation. Solid, not spectacular,
Yeah.
but it's been a revelation. And as we were saying, Paul, you were mentioning earlier, this positioning was all off today. That's been the part I've been most impressed about, is that like it's like watching a really good defensive center fielder, where like Kevin Kiermaier of the Tampa Bay Rays, he makes it look easy because he's always in the right spot. Doesn't have to run very far because he's just in the right spot. And that's what Sa's been doing. And that plus just being aggressive and jumping out and getting to the ball is making it really fun to watch. Especially when he gets a little rowdy with the opposing players, like he did at that Palace game last time, where he just bowled over. Who did he bowl over? Wasn't Saha, was it? Eze?
No, that was Brentford, I think.
Brentford. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, he likes his little niggle, which is good.
So our buddy Andrew Smith from Atlanta Wolves, he brought up this week Sa potentially being sold off in this summer, in the threat of that. Paul, do you think there's any threat of that? Because I think no.
No. I think EPL wise, I can't really see a potential destination for him, really, with the keepers that he's up against, who he could possibly be an upgrade on. So I think we've got him locked down pretty good. I think he can be a mainstay for a good 2 or 3 years.
How about
How long
you?
is under contract?
What was it, a 4 or a 5 year?
I think it was a 4-year contract.
Okay.
When we signed, he was 28 or 29. And I remember thinking, okay, into early 30s, which is still young enough for a keeper. And then, yeah.
Buffon said he's still a baby at that age.
Yeah, I certainly hope not. Because I think he's been really something to build on. But I could see, if they really got blown away, I could see where it was, because that's been my one concern so far, is that he's been so good, relatively out of nowhere, that you're like, what is his true level? Is he playing out of his skin now, and his true level is, let's call it 75% of this? I don't know. Or has he just unlocked something, and this is just, he's a superstar? I don't know.
I think he is, but we've just got to be mindful that there's a bollock drop within there, that he's liable to do it every 4 or 5 games. It seemed really odd for Patricio to do it, but then he would let that one in on the near post every so often. I think with Sa, we've got to take the upgrade, but realise that potentially there's maybe 1 or 2 errors that probably over the course of the season you're going to be on par with what Patricio was, but I think what he offers in addition makes up for that. So I can't do anything but praise the scouting to see that he'd be a fit, and the job that he's done since he's been here, for sure.
Well, now the topic that I think a lot of people have been looking forward to after Friday's game, Francisco Trincao, otherwise known as Paul's man crush, little man crush. So I'm going to do one new stupid question here from Noodle Hawk. Do y'all think that Trincao will start showing more potential now that he has a bit of confidence from the Leeds game? And if he does kick on, is there a possibility that the club does buy him? I think the confidence thing is really great there because you saw that he came in, had the really great assist, and it was like suddenly he flipped the switch. He had the great goal and then kept shooting and really almost he could have had another goal or two. Paul, that had to make you so excited, didn't it?
It was the unfortunate circumstance of Neves going off that actually filled me with a little dread to begin with, but then that negative turned into a positive in that the two in the middle and the three up top was actually when we're looking more dangerous, and maybe it was down to the opposition potentially playing at home. But yeah, something clicked with Trincao on Friday night, and it looked like the player that many of us thought was in there somewhere, but we've not just seen. And it had a little bit of everything. It had the assist, had the goal, had the long shot that hit the post, and just everything came together. It was just unfortunate that couldn't top off a performance like that with a win. But it's still a case that, is he going to do it on a cold Tuesday night in Burnley? I'm on the fence with that. I do think to Noodle Hawk's question, I think it's a done deal. And we always hear Lars talking about the different characteristics of his wingers, that everyone's a little different. And I definitely see that with Trincao, that he's not like a Neto, he's not like a Podence. He's got something different about him, whether it is as a forward in a three, or there is a more inverted, maybe central wide midfielder potentially there as well. I think it's a done deal based on he's got a different skill set that we've not really got.
How about you, Brian? You think it's a done deal?
I was probably going to say the opposite a little bit of unless this was a done deal from the get-go, which I kind of heard rumor that was the case, where it was, air quotes, option to buy with a strong, it was just going to happen. But yeah, I'm with you guys. You got to see more, got to see it again and again and again. And so far it's been, 60 amazing minutes. Maybe actually that was a full game of amazing minutes from him. But there's been so many where he just wasn't there. I do think there's a real quality player in there. I'm just not sure he's at the level needed for this team in this spot right now. If this was a Crystal Palace where you have a little bit more leeway and a little bit more run to, in that middle season game where it doesn't matter as much if you win. But if you're really trying to push on for Europe, he could be a project where he could turn into a real good player in 3-4 years. But I think we need someone who's a bit stronger now, in my opinion.
I almost think that performance could be a catch-22 for him. Obviously, we saw the potential, got us excited about him again. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if he comes out and has a couple stinkers now, everybody's going to be pointing back to go, well, what happened here? Why is this, somebody who's just fantastic one game and then awful some of the others? Because he's been awful in several games leading up to this one. And I think that's why it was so stunning. And honestly, that's why I was so bummed out more than anything, the result, because he deserved the win. He deserved to be the main talking point instead of us talking about the officials to start off. And it sucks. So, yeah, I'll be curious. We have another stupid question, which, Paul, have I told you how much I really love our listeners?
I think how much they understand us, even though, we've never met these people, yet they can see intimately into our thoughts with some of these.
So I'm going to read this question, and then I got to share my screen with you here, Paul. Okay, so this was from Andrew Barlow on Twitter, otherwise known as my new hero, by the way. Okay, so during the game, when we're talking about Trincao and Paul's man crush, he said, which actors should play Paul and Trincao when they make a romantic comedy about their relationship. And at first, then we were like, well, we got to think of a name first. So he had come up with part of it, and I said, okay, well, what about Romance with an Option to Buy? Well, maybe that works. I'm kind of thinking now maybe it should be Bromance with an Option to Buy. But later that night, Paul, Andrew sent me this. And we're gonna post this on Twitter. It's a movie poster from the makers of Santa Lodge, starring Paul LePage and Trincao, Romance with an Option to Buy, and it's Paul and Trincao there with the Wolves logo is a little heart, and they're holding it. It was incredible when I saw that. So number one, do we like the title Romance with an Option to Buy?
I think
what do you think, Brian?
Bromance works. I'll take
Bromance with an Option to buy. Okay. Yeah. And then I'm gonna let Brian go first. Who would be the actors that would play Trincao and Paul LePage?
This is gonna be hard. I can never think of actor. I can see the face I want to envision, but I'm just gonna draw a blank.
I'll give you a second.
Colin Farrell with the goatee.
Oh, Colin Farrell. Okay. For Trincao. What about for Paul?
Paul, I've heard you're very tall, so I'm trying to think of a very tall actor. This could be a good compliment. Who is the guy that played the Russian boxer in Rocky 2? Got blonde hair, super tall.
Yes. Dolph Lundgren.
There you go.
And believe it or not, that's not the actual first time I've been likened to Dolph Lundgren.
I mean, there's worse guys. Did you have an idea on who you wanted to play you, Paul?
No. I was trying to figure it out, and when you're just looking for that certain someone to try and put you in a good light, I was struggling. But what everyone always goes for me, and the height, and if I let my hair go curly, is Will Ferrell. So
I thought about Will Ferrell.
Keep it short then. Trying to keep the Dolph Lundgren.
I almost went with Will Ferrell for those reasons, but the actor who I think is Paul is Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. 6'4", give a shave. I think that's Paul. And then as far as Trincao, I'm gonna steal this from Joe 2 from the Two Past, Two Forever podcast. He's been a guest on here several times. His favorite actor is Timothée Chalamet, and I think that is who Francisco Trincao is. From Dune and everything. He's even got the hair. I feel like that's the perfect thing. So Andrew, and we'll post this. I'll get him. I'll ask him to put it as Bromance with an Option to Buy. But just an incredible graphic. I mean, I can't wait for everybody to see this. So, and what a fantastic question too. Paul, are you happy with that choice?
I'll take it. Yeah, I think we're in a good spot. Definitely, as I mentioned on Friday, definite potential for a Hallmark movie. Definitely.
Would it be a Christmas movie?
It's got to be like Trincao. You could just see him in a nice warm Christmas jumper and flecks of snow on his hair and dashing down the wing and taking on these players in a when Saturday comes with Sean Bean type style. Yeah.
I wonder who would be Bruno Lage in that case. I don't know. I almost feel like I'm gonna have to sit down and come up with the full cast.
Do the casting, yeah.
Can Moutinho play himself? He's already so handsome.
Yeah, absolutely. And Saw too. I think both of them can play themselves. Or Saw would be Seth Rogen.
Oh,
I could see that happening.
Yeah, the beard's definitely a solid shape on it too.
Yeah. Paul, is there any word on Ruben Neves? I couldn't find anything.
No, that's my only worry, because these injuries this season, they've kept the severe ones under wraps for best part of a week. They've let the dust settle on the weekend games, and then it's always been around the Tuesday or the Wednesday the following week saying, well, what's the latest? What's the news? So if he's pulled out the Portugal squad, then it's obviously something significant to take you out of those games in the international break. So yeah, I'm fearing the worst. I think it could be a chunk of time out that we're not seeing him for.
I did hear or saw on Twitter that someone took a picture with him at the airport on his way to Portugal. So whether if you're flying, they were saying on the Wolfspan cast, basically if you're flying, it's probably not horribly debilitating, but I don't know if that means he's going to be in with the Portugal side or not.
Here's the real irony. So he's out of the Portugal squad, replaced by Vitinha. Vitana, excuse me. That is the ultimate little like twist right there, huh?
That's what I was always thinking with this Trincao deal, that I often think that these loans are always with that obligation to buy, and I was convinced that was going to be the case with Vitinha, but that never happened for whatever reason. So he's having a phenomenal season. So who knows what happens in the future as far as he's concerned.
I still don't know, though, with him if he's built to handle the Premier League. I think we're definitely, the more you study the leagues, and especially seeing what's the success that Adama's had as soon as he went to Spain, there are just two dramatic playing styles. And I mean, that's been my criticism on Trincao, as he gets pushed off the ball so easily as opposed to Spain and Portugal. So I don't know. Obviously, I'd like to have him because it would be good depth, but I think at that price, I was okay with Wolves not getting him. Do you feel that way, Brian?
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I had. If it was similar to like the 8 Nori money, which is what, 12 million pounds? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go take a shot on him. And then if he plays half the time and then turns into a guy, great. And if he doesn't, you can probably still sell him off for the same amount, but 25 is a lot. Especially when we have other holes that we need to fill, or we have other areas we need to add depth, as we're seeing if Neves is out for a while. Don't have any center mids, really. Just have Moutinho, Dendoncker, and Kundal.
Yeah, if they go in that formation, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who could have seen it coming? Yeah. Nobody saw this coming.
Nobody.
Nobody at all. Definitely not in January. Mm-hmm. Well, we did have some good news, though, with Toti Gomez agreeing to a new contract through 2027. Paul, you think he's going to be that this kind of puts the nail in the coffin for Roman Saiz returning to Wolves next year?
Personally, I think so. I think, again, that's probably a done deal, that Saiz is going somewhere in Europe and that will be his one final payday. That we're looking at him in 31, 32, the money he could probably command with that type of move on a free versus the contract offer that will provide. I think there'll be too much of a gap between the two in order for him to stay. And that's probably warranted to a certain extent if you can lock up the likes of Toti Gomez for additional 5 years. At the moment, that's got a lot of parallels to Max Kilman for me, the way that he's come into the team and looked a really good fit right from the outset. So I think that is a nail for Saiz's departure. But look at the positive. That's Toti Gomez that's been able to come in and contend, and we could see him feature more at the end of the season.
Yeah, especially too. So I'm thinking now, obviously Cody will stay. I'm thinking it's going to be Kilman, Toti Gomez, and Mosquera are the big guys. You think that's true, Brian?
Yeah, we'd have Kilman, Mosquera.
Yeah, I think Bali's gone. I think especially. I mean, he had a great first game back. He had a real stinker this last time. I think he's gone.
I think he's still going to play a part. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen him at all. So
you don't think we saw him just to kind of rebuild the value some?
No, I think there's too much of a player within there that, not to cast him aside, I'd have thought that if he was going to be shown the door or ushered out of the team to reclaim some funds, maybe he'd have featured on the bench. But for him to come back in and start, I think there's life in Willy Bolly yet.
Sure hope so, because he's been a really key piece to the growth of this team, and he seems really well liked and respected. Seems like a real solid guy. So I hope there is still something really in there. Do we know much about the status of Mosquera and his injury? I haven't heard anything.
He
in a
was
really
on the
long time.
U23s. He was on the U23s game the other day.
Yeah,
that's good.
He's played and he's been back in training, but I think that's one that they can just let him carry on with that recovery and ease him back really gently, especially if Bolly's farther along and he's in somewhat of a rotation with Kilman at the moment. I think that'll go even further now if there's question marks over Sais's form, that it could be an opportunity to see some different combinations of that back. Certainly the two centre backs either side of Cody for the remainder of the season.
Mm-hmm. Also, it looks like Marcel is departing. I don't think that's any big shock, though. I mean, we knew it was always going to be a 2-year deal.
Yeah, age, profile, it makes a lot of sense. These reports tend to come out if it's from the buy-in club that these deals have been locked up, that it goes to Boca. I forgot what they call, but yeah, that Brazilian team. And yeah, when you're 32, you're going to go home to your home country and have a decent contract for 2 or 3 years and finish your career that way. So he came in, he did a job. So one of those that we say our fond farewells to.
Yeah, especially now that we've seen Johnny do what he's done. I think next year we're definitely going to go in with Semedo and Aitnuri as the 2 starters, and then Johnny as just like the swing guy. I still think Hoover's going to get loaned out, so maybe they'd get one other younger guy like a Giles or something, bring him in. But, another hot topic this week has again been Raul's future. It's like when everybody's reminded of all the good things Raul does for the team, then he misses a couple of shots and everybody's ready to run him out of town again. Paul, is this getting a little ridiculous and unfair towards him?
I think so. The play like Raul, it's more the sum of his parts and what he brings. So it's a different team, it's a different style of play, and I think that gets overlooked a little when it's just focusing in on him and his output and the opportunities that he's able to craft or capitalize on. It's a different way of playing to what we used to, so that factors into it. And I'm not even gonna suggest that it's any type of his injury factoring into anything. I don't think that plays a role that some people are saying that it does. I just think that it's comes down to how we're set up, the role that he has to do within the team now, and that's reflected in that we've gone. I think we completely turned the tables on the opportunities we craft from crosses now, which used to be a lot. It's not anymore. So obviously that's going to impact. So I think there's certainly life in Raul. I don't think he's got a lot of wear on the tires. He's the type of forward that I think can play into his early 30s, 32, 33, still be a fulcrum for the forward line and still contribute. But I think it will be potentially interesting this summer if we are looking for potentially a striker, and Bruno's talked about having someone that's of a different profile to both Raul and Fabio. Who that is, who that profile, the particular profile is, how much that play is going to cost, I think that will have a bearing on how significant a role Raul plays moving forward.
How about you, Brian? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because he is such a focal point, has been for the last couple of years, that he just draws a lot of that magnetism and a lot of that energy in people's like of their focus, because he's the guy that scores the goals and has been and could be and should be and hasn't quite looked the part, and because of that injury, it's very easy to point to something and say, oh, he's not the same. And having never been injured like that,
Yeah.
I can never say that, it can't not have any type of impact. There's no way to know. But it does feel like he's in a bit of an out of form, is struggling to get the I don't say the confidence, but the right composition of a control and aggression back. And right now it does kind of feel like he's trying to compensate for form with intensity, which is, when it works, is great, but when it doesn't, it just makes it a little flaily, like he's maybe trying a little too hard.
That's a great, I think that's a really great description there, is he's overcoming form with intensity. I like that. That's a great, I think that's a great summary of what's going on there. Anybody that thinks Raul's going to be gone, no. There's 0.0 chance. And I'll tell you one reason why. They're coming to the USA. You think they're coming over here for me and Paul and Brian? No. Listeners, you think they're coming over here for you? No. They're coming over here because Raul Jimenez is going to sell a boatload of tickets. And if there's no Raul Jimenez, they're not coming over here unless they suddenly pull out Pulisic out of nowhere, which isn't happening. I mean, this is the main reason. Their social media following in North America is 5 times what it is in England. And it's not because of, as great as he is, Connor Cody or Ruben Neves. No, it's because of Raul. Raul is going to be at Wolves as long as he wants. Even if he's not a starter, he is way too important to that club off the field. Same thing on why they paid the money to get Huang to make that permanent before anybody can jump. It's all part of marketing, and I feel like this is kind of the disconnect a little bit between fans in England and fans like us in the U.S. is, for England, they can just focus on, they're going to watch their club no matter what, right? They're going to sell the tickets no matter what. So for fans in England, they can focus exclusively on form and what they're doing on the pitch. Whereas to get the fans like us, to get, to sell the tickets, to grow in it, it's player based, especially in the U.S.
Oh yeah,
probably more than any nation but China. I would say it's player based.
That's a really good point. I mean, I've watched more Juve highlights and Barcelona highlights and Valencia highlights over the last year because of Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Sergio Dest. Well, now I'm watching because of the Damas on Barca.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, look at us, Brian. What was a big reason why we became Wolves fans? Adama Traore.
One guy, yeah.
One guy. Let me tell you what. I mean, we live in Houston, huge Mexican fan base. They root for Wolves because of Raul Jimenez. So don't think he's not going to get sold. Unless somebody comes in and offers $100 million, then maybe they consider it, but honestly, he's worth that off the field for Wolves. And what do you think, Paul? I mean, you're from England. You can probably say if I'm crazy or not here.
No, I see. I see both sides. I think that it was a very strategic and well thought out acquisition right from the get go. That he was the perfect fulcrum for that team. He was everything that you want in that central striker, with either 2 players out wide either side of him or with a central partner down the middle. So I think we've got him till his contract's up or relatively close, and then it'll be a final swan song somewhere, maybe MLS or maybe
it'll be MLS.
Yeah, just to capitalize on that for another 3, 2, maybe 3, even 4 years into his mid-30s at that point. So I don't see him going anywhere, but I would like to see that the contingency plan for his predecessor to start bearing fruit, if that's Fabio or if that's going to be someone else this summer. That Raul's still there, he's playing a role, and he may transition more to a squad player off the bench. But I think we're still going to see it for a good while.
Yeah, and that's absolutely a great point. Like, having him come off the bench, not the end of the world, especially, if Fabio starts to develop a little bit more. And I like going after and trying to find a different profile striker. I just don't think you're going to be selling Raul and using those funds.
But then even more so if we do squeeze into a European spot, and especially the Conference League, that it's not that Category A type competition, but it is still European football. It is still a route into the next stage up of European competition, which they're obviously aiming for, they're obviously shooting for. If we do have those extra games to contend with, then you need to rely on your squad, and you can explain to the likes of Raul, Fabio and another that you're going to be seeing plenty of minutes, because we got these Thursday, Sunday games back again, and you're going to be rotated. And I think players will buy into that, knowing that they're going to get the minutes. So it's going to be important.
Especially because that Europa Conference still, it may not be as prestigious as Europa and obviously Champions League, but there's still some quality sides in there.
Mm-hmm.
As well as West Ham was playing Sevilla the other day, and there's still, who's still left? Feyenoord, their quality side. I was looking at the list earlier today. I can't remember who else was in there.
Celtic still in it, so Celtic from Scotland, I'm not sure, but they were in and about it. So it's that caliber of opponent. It may not be that top tier of league, but you're probably going to be coming up against the champion of a European league at this stage. So it's certainly not walking the park to win it by any stretch. Yeah,
but if you're like a Fabio level player and you're playing against Celtic, that's got to feel better than playing against, I'm trying to think of like some of the, like Nottingham. Actually, they're not that bad, but some of the other championship sides from the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Just to circle back for a quick second. So when Raul does move on to his next step, I think I know one thing that he would look pretty nice in. Some Carolina blue.
I'll be curious to see where he goes. I think don't rule out Houston now. Houston has shown they have a new owner who just ditched out $6.5 million a year for Hector Herrera starting this summer. Ooh. So he's now going to be the highest paid Mexican player. And that's really where I get a lot of when I'm talking about Raul and his impact off the pitch. I'm getting a lot of that from Houston, because Houston, our attendance has really struggled, and it's because they haven't had a Mexican star to build around, because that's the Mexicans, they're going to jump ship on Wolves whenever Raul leaves, unless there's another one. As player-based as we are as a culture, they're even more so. They're going to root hardcore for Wolves as long as he's there, but when he's gone, he's gone. So just seeing the excitement in Houston now with Hector Herrera coming over, and just seeing how the Mexican community has really just embraced that and really gotten excited. And that's why I look at Raul and look, Fosun is not dumb. They have shown with all of their marketing. They had a Mexico jersey. Where they even admitted it's not a Mexico jersey, but it's a Mexico jersey. Like it's great. It's great. It's really smart. So, I like Raul. Raul's not going anywhere. We'll see. Maybe we'll have in a few years when we're doing this podcast, Paul, we'll have like betting odds as to where Raul's going to end up in the MLS.
Hopefully that's in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, hopefully it's a while, and a Champions League or 2 appearance later with Wolves. Well, Paul, do we have any more stupid questions this week?
Yeah, we've got a few to sprinkle in. We've got a Reminder just for the listeners that this is the part of the show for you to get in touch, ask us anything they'd like that's Wolves related. We'll read it out and answer it during this portion of the show, or sprinkle it throughout if it's relevant. You ask us on the socials, you can DM us or you can email them to hello@wholelotofwolves.com. So Nag, or NAG on Twitter, he's got two. So his first question is, if the club has 50 million to spend on players, who would you sign on top of the current squad? And he assumes that Adama's gone and Trincao counts as part of the current squad.
Brian, I feel like you're a good enough listener to the show that you know who I'm going to say with part of that money.
Renato Sanchez.
The Renato Sanchez, yes. Yes.
So I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
I thought you'd say Weston McKennie, honestly.
Oh, no, either one. I'd take them both. But yeah, either one of them.
It's interesting with this one because he actually writes players. So 50 million for players.
Players,
But if it's 25 million, you've got to if it's 25 million for two, then that kind of brings down the market that you're shopping in. So I think that's a consideration. Or do you lump it all on that one total out and out superstar, or are you more coy with how it's spent?
Who's your guys, Brian?
I mean, those are the ones that you would say are probably right up there, pretty high on my list. I think we need a real strong center mid to pair with Neves. I love Moutinho, and I hope he sticks around next year, but I can't imagine that he's going to be playing 38 games. He'll be 36 next year. So we need another strong guy in there. Trying to think of some good examples beyond Renato Sanchez, but he really fits the mold. Someone who can control the ball going forward, who's got some pace on him, who can play out in a wing if you need to, would be a really strong play, because I think we need some pace, honestly, and pace that's not just at the wing, because Neto and Podence are really fast, but I don't think anybody else is.
It's true. A couple things on Renato Sanchez. Number one, he's hurt again.
Oh no.
That's why he wasn't on the Portugal squad. Number two, there's rumors in quotes. His price tag could be dropping to 18 million euros because of the fact that his contract is now a year older. So kind of interesting. Weston McKennie, what would you give up? This is always my question here, Brian. What would you give up for Weston McKennie?
Oh, did I hear that you would give your kidney? So it'd be Weston McKidney. Ooh. To have a real strong center mid that is American, which would be a lot of fun.
Yes. Would you give up your Charlotte tickets?
I would give up this thing because she's been driving me crazy. My cat's been trying to climb all over me the whole time we've been talking.
Oh, that's
but
funny.
I would not give up my cat. But for
would you never go to a Charlotte FC game as long as they're there if the Wolves could sign Weston McKennie, if it meant Wolves signing Weston McKennie?
Ooh. I certainly wouldn't go to a Panthers game for that, because they're terrible.
Yeah, they are.
I might. I would, if they signed Weston McKennie and he was there for 5 or 6 years, then yeah, I might be willing to do that. But that's a pretty tough ask because it's been a lot of fun.
It is. See, I mean, we need to get Jeff Shee listening to this, Paul, to realize how dedicated we are as fans. We're giving up beards, kidneys, arms.
Felines.
Yeah, I mean, Danny last week said he'd give up his left arm, and he's left-handed. I thought that was incredible. Paul, who would you spend the money on?
I'm going midfield, and based on the likes of Toti Gomez coming through and the potential in Mascara, I think we could be. We don't know yet, but I think we could be covered at the back. And really, for the most part of this season, the defense has been pretty good. What we've missing is that cover in the midfield and that real midfielder who could complement Neves and offer something a little different. I don't know who that is. What I would probably go towards is, it's probably not going to happen now, but say Leeds got relegated and Calvin Phillips is available.
Oh man,
I'd spend all that 50 million on Calvin Phillips, because we probably wouldn't be in the final reckoning. I think we could be there or thereabouts. But if Villa are supposedly interested in, then I don't see why that would rule us out. So that would be my go-to.
That's a great answer. That's a really good answer. Now I'm going to be up on Twitter searching, Wolves rumors.
So Nag's second part to his question, he says he's actually stuck in an American airport for a couple of hours en route back to the UK. So what's one piece of duty free that a Brit should pick up to take home?
Is it different at different airports? I thought the duty free was kind of the same everywhere. It's just like liquor and Toblerones.
Pretty much.
I think what he's talking about is American products that you necessarily wouldn't find over in the UK.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say one of my favorites, Jack Daniel's whiskey.
Oh, you can get Jack Daniel's.
Yeah. Oh well, never mind.
Yeah.
Over there.
It's pretty common as well. So you could get it in the duty free part of the airport. But I'd probably go regional. I'd say a nice bottle of barbecue sauce from Texas would be something good to bring back. I don't know. Maybe if it's Florida or that part of the world, some nice cigars that maybe have a Cuban influence or something like that. That would be a good one. But
Nuno would approve.
Yeah. Apart from that, maybe a little bottle of beer salt. Add some twang onto your beer when you get home to England. That's not very hard. Well, never seen really as far as English drinking goes. So that would be.
Do they have Corona and Dos Equis out there?
Yeah, they have Corona. It's obviously it's an import and possibly seen as more of a summer drink. But yeah, you can get a Corona.
You've never put salt on a beer, Brian?
No, I don't.
You've never taken like a Corona or a Dos Equis and put a lime in it, and then or when you get it on draft, put the lime in it and then the salt around the rim.
Lime, yes. Salt, no.
Okay,
yeah, so it's almost like a margarita type deal. So when Wolves come to Houston, now we know another thing that needs to be on the menu, Paul.
Yeah, we'll get you some. It's called twang. We'll get you some twang to try, Brian.
I would love that.
And the last one, it's from Steve on Twitter. He's at Wolfie Photo. He asks us, should I tell my parents I'm adopted? I had to read that.
I love our listeners. I really do. That's tremendous. My question is, would he tell them that because they're Wolves fans and he thinks they raised him wrong, or is he a Wolves fan and they're the shit fans? Like, I'm curious. I feel like I need more details here.
That's right. It's an interesting one for sure. So I say yes, Steve, as long as you come back on and tell us what they said. So.
Hopefully the answer isn't good, or you found out.
Yeah. How did you know? Well, Brian, we're about to wrap this up, so let the listeners how they can get a hold of you and Charlotte Wolves if they're listening and would like to join you at a meetup.
Certainly. So you can find me on Facebook more often than not. So on Facebook, it's just Brian Donley, Donley, and part of Charlotte Wolves FC Facebook group. I'm on the Wolves USA feed a fair amount, so you can just hit me up anywhere there. On Twitter, it's Brian Donley 8 and at Wolves Charlotte. We try to meet up every, probably 2 to 3 or 3 or 4 matches. We've been doing it a lot at Hooligans on Elizabeth Ave, which very conveniently for me is like half a mile from my house. And our city is kind of like Houston, where it's pretty sprawly. So we have people who are like 20 miles in north and 20 miles south, and they're willing to come to me, which is fantastic. But it's a great place to catch a game. They have every single game on all the time, and it's got a nice big open door, so you can get the nice fresh air when it's nice out, which is great. So those places. And if you don't mind, I'd like to plug one more quick thing. I'll be doing a charity walk on May 14th called Walk a Mile, which is to support Safe Alliance, which is a shelter it is a domestic violence shelter. So it's an organization that provides shelter, support, and advocacy for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And I will be walking a mile in about 4-inch heels.
That's
to
awesome.
raise
Good for you.
money and awareness for their organization. I'll be posting a link on my social about that, but I can send you the link, which is kind of a long URL, but it's walkamile.swell.give/fundraisers/Brian.Donley, or you can just go to safealliance.org and check it out from there. It's actually a walk that they do all across the country. Ours is obviously focused on Charlotte, but there are various walks that are similar to it, and it's a cause that my family and I feel really passionate about and want to support, and it's also a lot of fun. So
Sure thing.
if you guys
that's awesome.
are inclined to include
So
that,
you would
I would appreciate it.
I'm guessing you would have given up your Panthers fandom if they would have traded for Watson, based on that, right?
It would have been very problematic. Yes, that is very true. That was actually a conversation my wife and I are having a lot lately. Of if this happens, it wouldn't have been a good look. Look, I'm not a huge Panthers fan. I'm enjoying English football a lot more than American football. It helps that the Panthers are not very good.
Well, that's an awesome cause. We'll be sure to post a link for that as well. So that's great. Keep up the great work there.
Thank you. I can send you some pictures too if you want from last year.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
my wife
share it.
Every year finds heels that are taller and taller and taller. And last year's they were a little too small, and it was a very, very long 30-minute walk to go through. And this year is going to be at a brewery called Noda Brewery, which also, plug for them, makes really good beer for Charlotte FC called Pitchside Pills, but they're also a big supporter of the walk. And over at that part of town, the sidewalks are really like busted and uneven. So that mile-long walk takes like 45 minutes.
Oh, that's brutal.
And that brings this week's show to an end. So please continue to do what you can in terms of liking, subscribing, and reviewing Whole Lot of Wolves on the podcast platform you find yourself listening to us on right now. So between games, we are active on Twitter. We'll do a halftime space on Twitter for most of those weekend games too. We're also on Facebook, and a reminder for that email address, it's hello@wholelotofwolves.com. So thanks to Alex producing, and we got Ron Firth in Canada who helps us with our social media posts. We're going to be back at the start of next week to preview a tasty little Midlands derby when the Villa come to town. So until then, up the Wolves.